Let's be brutally honest right now. That's a big question.
I'm looking for someone who doesn't want to go to base camp, but they want to go to the very top.
Whether it's here, India, New York.
Civilization was born at happy hour.
That's what wins. That's what stands out. That's what people are interested in. That's what I want to know. The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hospopreneurs Podcast. My guest today, Zhong Xu, created the first iPad point of sale in the EMEA region 10 years ago. This SaaS product has since evolved into the company known today as Lightspeed and is now available in over 100 countries. Zhong was global director of Lightspeed Hospitality until 2018 when he co-founded Deliverect, a third-party food delivery aggregator that integrates platforms with restaurant point-of-sale systems. Hey team, the episode today is sponsored by our friends at Access Collins. They provide comprehensive table management and end-to-end function management tools that enable you to have complete control over the entire customer journey. If that's something you'd like, please support us by supporting them at bit.ly/hospo sponsor. Hello and welcome to the show, Zhong.
Hey James, happy to be on your show.
Zhong, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the program today. As soon as I came across Deliverect, I had to look into what you guys were about and then stumbled upon your name, and your background is amazing. Obviously, you founded Lightspeed, which was a revolutionary business using cloud storage for the POS system, and that really changed things and had a lot of businesses that followed in your footsteps there. But today we're focusing a bit more on Deliverect. I'd love to open the program with the first question that we have on the show, which is a crazy hospitality story or exceptional hospitality experience. I'd love to know what you have brought to the program today.
One of the things that I recently encountered was, it's not in the restaurant industry, but it's related to service. As I've been flying a lot, I'm actually on certain alliances on airlines, gold member and even higher. But recently, because there was no flight on certain alliance, I need to switch a complete airline alliance. And what was surprising was when I checked in, the airline actually told me, hey, Mr. Xu, you're actually already Sapphire. How is this possible? Because I never fly with your airline. Although I never applied for a card, they still have tracked me through the years and the months and saw that I've been flying a lot randomly with the airline. And although I didn't apply a card, they still tracked my flight and gave me the point. So that was actually a quite surprising and delightful experience because they offered me upgrade, launch access, although that was not my preferred or my standard airline. After that experience, I'm actually thinking about switching to them because I think for customer service, that's a great way in enticing your customer back to your company. So that was an amazing experience that I didn't expect.
Yeah, very good. And having that then, what would the effect be if that was taken away though? Would it be worse than the effect that if you came over and they bumped you up, that now you have that standard set? Now you have to be Sapphire.
It was more about surprise. Any business should surprise their customers. And sometimes doing something small as a gesture makes a big impact. That they know me, that they offered a bump and know that I was flying a lot, although I was not using them as a preferred alliance, showed that they actually cared a lot. And that made me feel, hey, I need to maybe switch to them instead of always flying with the other alliance. Although I have a lot of points, it's just quite usual, right? There's nothing special about it. They're not making the experience worthwhile. People always think that customer wants promotions and discount and so on. No, actually they want a personalization. They just want to have a good chat, or when you arrive, they know your name and make you feel welcome. And that goes a long way, especially in hospitality.
And you would have absolutely felt valued there straight away. That's obviously enough to entice a lot of people to change airlines. So I appreciate you sharing that story today, Zhong. I'd love to know what sits behind what it is that you do. Often I ask as the second question, why you do what you do. I'm interested in what really drives you and what sits behind the work that you do that really inspires you.
People always ask me why I'm working in the hospitality industry. After all these years, I keep doing this. It's a deeper story. I'm an immigrant. I moved to Europe very young on, but it's because of my parents or my dad. So he moved to Belgium where I live in 90s, right after Chinese Cultural Revolution. And what matters is, back then he was doing a PhD. As he came in the 90s from China, they saw that country as a third world country. And the place where he was working at for doing his PhD, they didn't have subsidies for paying him, and said basically, hey man, you need to work a year for free. So why is that important? To survive, he actually went into random Asian restaurant to wash the dishes to just earn a buck. The third restaurant hired him. It was always very important for me because he always told me, hey, that's where you come from. The restaurant industry is very built by immigrants and they help a lot of newcomers to make that change. And it's also how my history started because while working at these restaurants, one of the owners asked him, hey, you're a smart guy. And there's something called back then DOS or Windows just came out. Can you make us something to run my restaurant with? So he bought a book, Learn C++ in 30 days, and created a point of sale for a Chinese restaurant. So still today, he has his company. He has over 2,000 restaurants. So I literally grew up in that space. And although my father is great at software, he was less good at business. I always ask him, you're almost a monopolist. So why don't you charge more money? Why don't you raise your prices? He always told me, sometimes it's really about values. These restaurants have helped us, not only my father, but actually you as well, to survive. And so what we can do back for them, it's worth it, especially these SMB restaurants are glue of our society. And I took that by heart. So in every company, we are thinking about how can we help these restaurants and make them grow and successful. As they grow, we also become successful. So that's really in our DNA to make these restaurants small and big to thrive.
What a great story as well there. It shows the hospitality industry does an amazing job to support and welcome so many people at all sorts of stages of their development. And unfortunately, society didn't, as you say, there recognize your dad's work. He was studying or had his PhD at the time there, that sort of level of qualification. And hospitality does this great job at just welcoming everybody. You get in the trenches, you do the work, you do the hard yards, and it can really deliver. And so a testament to your dad to go in there and swallow any ego that he may have had and work hard to achieve what he has. So yeah, well done. And thank you for sharing that part of your story as well, Zong. Coming from that background and growing up in and around the hospitality industry with your dad, how did you go from having this father involved in the hospitality industry to then being involved with Lightspeed and then now Deliverect? What's that sort of story in a succinct version? How did you actually come to do what you're doing now?
It was quite funny because, as my father had this business, I was studying software engineering. He always wanted me to help him. And one of my biggest nightmare actually was take over his business. And the reason why was each time he was on holiday, I need to take over support. And you know how restaurants are, they started yelling at you to say, hey, you need to fix something immediately. Once there was a customer in 2-3 hours away from where I was, and I drove there to help the lady to take all their delivery orders. And the reason why is she was saying, hey, I can't enter numbers anymore. And it was just because the cleaning lady pushed numlock, and because of that, she could not enter number anymore. So during that almost 3 hours back and go drive, I was thinking there must be a better way to solve this. That was in 2008, 2009, just in the rise of cloud. So the first iPad came out, I thought, wow, that's the perfect moment. Now we have a way where a simple device can be used in restaurant, but even more, we can create a cloud version so that we can maintain and run and help these restaurants run remotely. So in 2010-11, I created together with Yang, my co-founder now as well, the first iPad point of sale in Europe, one of the first 3,000 apps, and that grew really quickly and became a Lightspeed restaurant. Fast forward, I think to 2018, 2019, when Lightspeed was already quite big and going public. I was actually going to take a sabbatical, a year rest of all this craziness. We had a lot of restaurants around the world actually saying, hey, Zhong, you can't go on a sabbatical. We have a bigger challenge to tackle. They told me about, hey, today, and that was in 2017, 18, they see that 10, 20, 30% of their revenue are coming from online marketplaces, right? So from the channels as Uber Eats, DoorDash, Skip, and so on. And they really believe that it's going to be a massive game changer because they saw what happened in retail. They saw what happened in hotel. Although they didn't believe, hey, how is online going to transform food because it's about creativity and hot food, they still saw that it will happen. And that's why they ask us, hey, can you make a solution that's going to give us back control and actually allow us to adopt this online world without losing sight of it? And that's why we created Deliverect. We created Deliverect to help small and big restaurants to manage and sell food on as many online channels as they want without bothering about the operational side. Because what we do is in a big busy shift, for example, and you have all these channels, when the orders comes in on these tablets, we automate it completely. We get the orders from a Uber Eats, DoorDash, and a Skip automatically in your point of sales, automatically in your kitchen, and even feedback the info back to these delivery service providers so that the ordering is all automated, and the only thing a restaurant need to worry about is cooking the food what they do best. And that has been a massive game changer for us.
What are some of the businesses that you're working with that listeners might be familiar with and not know that you're actually behind the communications that are taking place with their systems?
We have a very big range of restaurants, right? From smaller, medium restaurants, but as well bigger chains like Australia itself, Outback Steakhouse. We work with Craveable Brand. We even power with Unilever all your Ben and Jerry's delivery. So, for example, in any city in the world where you are ordering Ben and Jerry ice cream 24/7, well, we are powering and automating that process because you can order from a delivery marketplace, but someone still in these stores need to get the orders and package it. We run these processes for these restaurants. Besides the food side of it, what Deliverect really set us apart is we're not just building a software for a restaurant. We're actually creating the backbone of digital food. And what does that mean is we connect two very fragmented worlds. One is the online space, the marketplaces, social selling, but as well in-restaurant ordering systems, QR ordering systems, dine-in payment systems, and then on the other spectrum, the very fragmented world of point of sales. As we come from that space, we power over 300 point of sale companies. So all these systems are integrated with Deliverect so that at both ends, you only need one API to access or the online space or the physical restaurant space.
It's an incredible scale that you guys have, Deliverect. You mentioned something called virtual brand marketplace. Tell us more what that actually means, because we talked about creating these virtual brands and what domain that they're in on an online space.
Today, we power almost 27,000 restaurants around the world, and we process 150 million orders for these restaurants. And one of the trends we have seen through the years during the pandemic, but even now accelerating, is that restaurants are understanding that they need to sell online, but also need to increase maybe the visibility of their restaurant online. Once you go there, then the question is, how do you increase visibility or volume of online food traffic? And it's quite simple in the case of restaurant is creating a virtual brand. And what does that mean? Imagine you have a Japanese restaurant. Before you would say, hey, I have this restaurant, I'm only selling Uber Eats, DoorDash, Skip on my own website. That creates quite some traffic online, maybe $30,000 or $40,000 in revenue. That's good. The restaurant owner can also just split up in more virtual brand. They can launch on these platforms with, for example, a sushi brand, a pokeball brand, a ramen brand, and maybe a mochi or rice brand. So that's still the same restaurant with the same menu. But online, they have split up their menus into multiple brands. And that increases the visibility of it. So before, with your Japanese restaurant, you only had 4 online channels. So 4 online storefront or windows. If you split up and 4 extra virtual brands on these 4 channels, suddenly you get 16 online storefront and windows, right? So where you can get online sales. And one of the things that people need to understand is that end customers are always looking at specializations. If you're on these marketplaces, you're looking at, hey, the specialist for sushi, the specialist for pokeball, and so on. And if you create these virtual brands, you're going to adopt and get a lot of sales and foot traffic because of it. And you can easily double or triple your revenue because of that. More and more restaurants are adopting these concepts. And it could even be, and that's why we launch a virtual brand marketplace, that sometimes you're out of inspiration and say, hey, I don't know how to do these virtual brands. We are linking independent restaurant up with really operators and virtual brand creators that allows them to take these brands and just push them live in their restaurant. For example, we have a brand called Bitcoin Pizza that is created by the guys of PopChew in the US. But as well, internationally, we work with virtual dining concept that has Mr. Beast Burger, The brand is something that you can take in your restaurant, sell online, and generate a lot of my revenue without all the hassle of creating these brands.
You talked a lot about a number of things there, but in that you discussed specialization, this move to being more and more specialized. How then can brands compete and create loyalty when everyone's trying to specialize in different spaces?
If it's online food or offline food, it's still about the same principles, right? You need to, first of all, create great food. And then second, you need to create amazing brand. An amazing brand is not just about the images you put online, but it's that complete service experience that you can give to your customers. So it means even creating offline and online loyalty programs that work seamless together. For a lot of restaurants today, they always struggle about, hey, when are we selling on these marketplaces? Actually, we do not know our customers. So how do we know that James has ordered 4 times on DoorDash and then came to my restaurant and then ordered on Skip? Well, connecting these things are important, and you need software for doing that. Because, for example, even if you would order through our restaurant of any of these marketplaces, once you get the order in, you're gonna have on the order a ticket, a QR code where it gives you a promotional review. And as you scan it, we can link you up to that order. So it creates that history that once you have built the customer relation side of things and the list of who your customers are and how often they order with you, you can add a lot of these loyalties. And again, customers are not always out there for a big discount. They just want to feel appreciated, knowing that you know who they are. And if you give them a free dessert in the packaging, that makes their day and that gives them a smile. And that's more than enough what you need to do.
What then do you believe hospitality is defined by in this changing space and space heavily influenced by technology?
It still boils down to the same principle. I mean, you can be super tech, but if you don't create good food and your brand is not that great, you're not going to succeed. The only difference, I think, between before and now is just creating great food is not enough. You need to have a lot of automation. Optimizing and operation running your business is key. It's not just looking at costs, but how do we help them to increase their margin on prices? And there's simple tricks for that. So, for example, when you're selling online on your marketplaces, your end customer actually do not really care about prices. So you can really have dynamic prices. So it means that busy shift during the noon and dinner, you can increase your prices by 10-20% dynamically. You never do that in a real restaurant because you have a fixed menus, but online you can do that continuously. Playing with menu management, changing dynamic pricing is really something that's going to help you to optimize your margins. And that's going to be key as we go.
Are there any other things, any other products that stand out that might have a surprising story around them? Situations like that where people are actually like, oh, wow, okay, we actually don't need to provide that for free or as an add on or anything interesting that you've come across?
Yeah, for sure. I was just in the Ghost Kitchen conference in Dallas and with a panel with a lot of DSPs. And one of the insight they actually gave me is, and it's true, is once you're on these marketplaces, you want to be visible. And how are you getting visibility? Because there's so many other restaurants there. A lot of your customers are looking at and searching for deals. When you get the buy one, get one free deal, you tend to open that restaurant and order from there. You can choose what you're going to give for free. So why do you always need to give the most expensive item for free, the burger or so on? You can give a fries for free or a drink for free. Because a drink, for example, is super cheap, but that's in the restaurant mind. It's like, hey, the cost is low. But in a customer's mind, it's like, hey, I'm getting a couple dollars for free because that drink is worth a couple dollars, right? Playing with these smaller modifiers and promos gonna give you a lot of visibility. Another trick that it's very small and doesn't cost you anything, especially online, is once you launch a restaurant online, you have these hero images, right? So when you go to these platforms, you see the picture of your restaurant and often it's food. Nobody ever changes that. So you can actually change that dynamically. We provide that in Deliverect. But so depending on the event that's happening or a sport match or a celebration, you can change your hero image to lure more customers. And that alone is increasing your visibility enormously without costing you anything. So all these smaller things are going to increase sales dramatically without actually costing you anything. And that's magic, and that's something that restaurants need to adopt and learn to do.
I'm guessing then, being a data driven business, you must be looking at what the sales uplift is if you do dynamically change images, for example, and tracking these sorts of things then.
Yeah, so to give you an idea, on average, Any restaurant that starts with Deliverect sees within 3 months their top line revenue increase by 25% minimum. And most of them see it increasing by 50%. After what I all told you, it's quite easy to understand why. One side, hey, these restaurants are adopting more online channels, creating virtual brands, so they get more sales and visibility. But as well, they are starting to experimenting with multiple menus a day. We have a restaurant that has 4 menus a day. They have a breakfast menu, lunch menu, afternoon menu, dinner menu, and all these prices and items are different because during big shift they have simpler items and more expensive. Other times they are luring the customers in. In the afternoon they have more dessert or ice cream and snacks on their menu. So really adapting that to your customer increase your throughput.
So, Zong, what do you see the future of the physical space being?
The physical space will remain, and we all hope that it remains. But if you look at, we have stats of our restaurant, but also general industry standard, you see that online order volumes have not crashed and with the reopening. An average restaurant sees that their online revenue has dropped maybe by 5%, 6%, so it's neglectable. And they do see a doubling of customer walk-in. So if you're a restaurant, you still want to make sure that you can take both revenue streams in. So one side, yes, serving your walk-in customers and your in-restaurant customers, but as your customers have moved also to online, they're never gonna stop anymore. So you need to start optimizing for that. Second thing we do see is even in the dine-in space, automation is going to be key because it's hard for a restaurant to find waiters, staffing. So tools to QR code ordering systems, helping them to order without needing for waiters and helping them to optimize these flows are key. It's going to be interesting to see how everything works out, but as it's going to be tough for everyone around the world to find staff in the restaurant space, the ones that's going to make it and be able to stay open and have these volumes are the ones that's going to automate and use systems to run a lot of the manual processes.
Where are you learning at the moment? So, what are you learning about or exploring? I'm wondering what you're focused on, not just the growth of the business, but in your own development.
I'm still learning to let go. The reason why is, standard as entrepreneur, as you go through the different phases, especially when it grows, is to let go, to make sure that there are always fires, and some fires you just should let it burn. And it's not easy because standard as entrepreneur, you're always quite a control freak. You want to make sure you see things and you want to jump on it. But as the company scales, you just need to trust other people, making sure that you found the right people that are in the right place and just trust them that they're going to make it happen. So letting go is always a big thing for me.
I appreciate your honesty there, Zong. What innovations or innovative techniques have you seen in more recent times? We've touched on a number of things there, but what comes to mind when I ask that question there?
There's a lot of things moving, right? I think in the hospitality industry is really the coupling of the restaurant side. I mean, there's so many ghost or dark kitchens arising these days. That's a still early phase and interesting side of it. You have these kitchens now doing 15, 20, and even in the Middle East where we have a lot of customers doing 50 or 100 brands from one kitchen. I just wonder how far that trend can go because today it's not only food anymore. We see Shell gas stations as well CPG, FMCG companies adopting and selling on these marketplaces all items, right? From Ben& Jerry ice cream to cold beer delivery. We have in Singapore where there's cold beer fridges linked to our system so that you could order from any platform and get cold beer delivered within 10 minutes. That seems to be very innovative, and I wonder how far this can go.
When you talk about 50 or 100 brands in the same kitchen, can you tell us about the structure of that? Are there a number of different businesses behind that, or is it one brand that owns all those brands as you've described on the delivery platforms?
So it would be one kitchen with one owner that is running multiple brands. It could be that some of the brands he owns, but also some of the brands he licensed. And that's quite interesting because at the end of the day, it's very much about engineering these food so that even with 50 brands, you maybe need only 15 to 20 chefs to create. And so it's very efficient way of producing food. It's almost in a factory way. And I think that works for quick serve restaurant types, less for fine dine, obviously. It's interesting to see these trends because you would think that end customer really would care where it comes from. as long as the food is arriving quick and warm, you don't really care. And it's really just a building where there's chefs working and creating that food at a high quality, obviously, but very tailored to the delivery space.
Zong, when you play with ideas, you're very good at playing with these ideas. And some people are driven by looking at the data and the numbers tell them the answer. And some people are a little bit more abstract and fluid with it. How do you play with concepts? Do you have a process that you go through when you play with ideas, or do they just sort of come to you?
I wish it just came to me, but ideas, I think it's always quite easy because good ideas float around a lot. I think the main suggestion is just listen to your customers. So, for example, Deliverect, I didn't come up with the idea. I found a way to listen to the problem my restaurant had and create the company around it and solved it for them and iterate. Listening to enough customers complaining about the same thing should trigger you to say, hey, there's maybe something into it. And one of the other advice, if you're an entrepreneur, is don't start to create a very complicated product. Start very quickly and early on. If you have an issue that you can fix and you hear a lot of people want it, you can easily get them to pre-fund your development or create a very limited MVP and make them your early adopters and test it out. And that's how often ideas becomes reality. After all these years, ideas is the easiest part. Before I always thought, hey, I need this idea that's gonna make the difference. I learned that idea doesn't really make the difference. It's really about execution, having the right strategy, and having the grit to hold on and make the difference.
Zong, what adjacent industries or markets, products, systems do you look to model the growth of your business?
Hospitality is quite big, but like I mentioned, I mean, if you look at similarities, what we do, you have this in retail. You have a system that allows you to launch your brand on different retail platforms from Amazon to any other e-commerce platform. As well, you have this in hotels because what you have as Uber Eats or Deliveroo or DoorDash, you have the Booking.coms of this world, Expedia, and so on. So it's quite similar to that side of it. The only difference is, I think, in hospitality, you're looking at less centralization of chains because a lot of restaurants or SMBs. So you have a different way of tackling this business and supporting this industry. So it means that you need to make sure it's easy, but also having the support framework to support restaurants because they are 24/7 open.
If someone wanted to do what you do, what advice would you give to them?
I think it's very hard to do what we do because you need that prior history. The reason we have over 300 point of sales is just because we spent the last 20 years in this industry. You need to create flexibility and you need to create that credibility. If someone in general in the hospitality software space want to work and try to scale, I will give them advice that partnership is the key. And that's in general. It's really about ecosystem. It's about working good with other parties. Try to focus in the thing that you are really good at instead of trying to do everything. If you do everything, you can go very deep, but then you're never going to go quite quickly and grow. If you have one thing that is really scalable, focus on that and work with partners to elevate the rest. And that allows you to add businesses at a tremendous rate and scale around the world. So it's really a choice. Do you want to be very big locally and do everything, or do you want to be massive globally, but then focus on one or two things that you're good at?
To learn these sorts of principles, who's taught them to you, Zong? Is it through just trial and error, or have you had some people in your life that have taught you these things?
We are privileged that each time when I start a business, I think it's cool and any entrepreneur should do is get a group of advisors around you and people that have done it before, not per se in your industry even, but people that just have gone through the steps that can tell you their experience and can hold you from some of the mistakes that you would anyway make. So that has helped a lot. And beside that, the Lightspeed journey has, of course, showed us that it's possible to scale that quickly. I think sometimes you need to be in a startup and scale up that and go through that journey and write and understand what's all possible to believe, right? Once you have seen it, you know it's possible, and you're going to double down and go quick on it. And for the rest, just surround you with good advisors, surround you with entrepreneurs that has done it before. You will see that often it's quite easy to get these people because we all have the tendencies after all these years to say, hey, we maybe got some luck in doing this, but it's also our job to pay it forward.
Zong, in the same sort of vein, taking that thread on a bit further, who do you look up to? Who inspires you to keep going?
It's actually our barista. So we have a barista that joined us and he has a MS. So it's not easy to work what he need to do. He comes in, day out. Why is it inspiring? The guy has such a life-threatening disease. It's not comfortable, but every day he shows up with a big smile, does his work, and helps everyone out. It's just puts stuff in perspective, and it's something that I admire a lot, and something that I need to learn as well. Sometimes when you get a small hiccup in life, still go head on with it with a big smile, and there's always something that can be worse. So that's life's joy that some people have that I really admire, and that really humbles me and makes us go and push us even more forward.
What a good answer. Zhong, what's your biggest challenge right now? You must be looking at all sorts of things, but I'm wondering what is providing you with professional friction currently that you're working through?
I think in hyper growth, it's about maintaining culture.
Mm.
How do we set up values that people can run, but as a growing organization, still have some processes? So the challenge of culture vs process is always a tough thing, right? Because we have a culture where it's company is run by values, it's very open, transparent, and people can take a lot of decisions. As you grow, you need some process to guide that because not everyone has all the info, although we try to be very transparent. So the trade-off between, growing up into a bit bigger company and having process vs a startup where it's very driven by pure values and openness, it's a difficult trade-off sometimes.
I appreciate your honesty with the answer there as well, Zong. Just have one last question for you today. Who would you like to hear on the show?
Yeah, I would like to hear Jack Dorsey
Yeah,
on the show. I think Square is a company we admire. They have done a lot, also in the hospitality space. Very open-minded in what he does and future-driven. So that would be an interesting guest if you could get.
I totally agree. I'd love to have Jack Dorsey on the show. For now, Zong, I want to thank you for being on the program. Thank you very much for joining me today. It's been really inspiring hearing your story. Thank you for your insights, and I'm very excited to see Deliverect grow.
Thank you, James.
This program is hosted by James Henderson. Voiceovers were by Angus Brennan and Shim Phelan. Thanks to our distribution team, and a special thanks to you for tuning in every week. This program was produced by H Media. We'll see you soon.